Hey there, thanks for joining me today. This is Laura Lynn with KeepInkingUp.com. I'm an independent demonstrator for Stampin' Up in San Antonio, Texas. And today I wanted to share some information about our embossing folders. There's been a little bit of a change this year, so I wanted to kind of go over everything for you. You'll find our embossing folders on pages 198 and 199 of our current 2019-2020 annual catalog. You'll see here this first part, these are our 3D embossing folders. They used to be called our Dynamic Textured Impressions Embossing folders. That's quite a mouthful. Anyway, that we've changed manufacturers this year, and so now they are called 3D embossing folders. And then we have our standard embossing folders over here as well. So I wanted to explain the differences between the embossing folders and how you use them. So here are the three. I'm going to go ahead and begin with the standard embossing folder. This is called Woodland. We've had this for a couple of years now. It's been extremely popular over the years. I've really enjoyed using it. So to use all of our embossing folders and our dies will work in any embossing or die cutting machine that you may have. We used to carry the Big Shot in the catalog, and so that is the machine that I have, and so I will be demonstrating how to use the embossing folders with that particular machine, but they will work on any machine that you have, and hopefully Stampin' Up will be offering a different die cutting machine in the very near future, and I will certainly keep you all updated when that machine becomes available. But for today, I'll be using my Big Shot. I'll bring that in here. And to use our standard embossing folder, you will, let's see if I put this in here. You'll begin with the Big Shot platform that comes with the Big Shot and place one cutting plate down on top of that, acrylic cutting plate that comes with the Big Shot. And next will go your cardstock inside your embossing folder. Now I do want to give another tip. I am using a piece of cardstock that I've already die cut with our stitched rectangle dies, and if you are going to be embossing anything that you have die cut, you do want to do the die cutting first rather than the embossing first. If you emboss first and then die cut, you will flatten the embossing that you just created on your cardstock. So it is important that you go ahead and already die cut your cardstock before you run it through your embossing folder. So I'm going to place this embossing folder in here. I want to get some of these branches in here. I like the branches. So you place that in here, and then I like to put the hinge toward the rollers of the machine. That'll just help the longevity of your embossing folder, so it'll last longer. You'll place another standard cutting plate on top and roll that through the Big Shot. Okay, and when we take that out, you have this really pretty piece of cardstock that is embossed, and that's a really nice embossing. It's not our 3D embossing, but it is three-dimensional because that's what embossing is, and that's just a really, really nice embossed piece. I wanted to show you a card that I made using this folder. This is the folder in the background. I added a little bit of ink using a sponge dauber just to kind of enhance the embossing a little bit. And then I combined on this card with the Rooted in Nature stamp set, the Perennial Birthday stamp set, and the Buffalo Check stamp set. And I don't know if you can tell too, I used the Subtles Dynamic Textured Impressions Embossing folder on that Buffalo Check piece to make it look like fabric. That's another favorite embossing folder of mine. So anyway, that is using the standard embossing folders that we have. So next I'm going to keep that so you can see how this is a standard one. You can see the thickness of that. And I wanted to show that because next I'm going to be showing what used to be our Dynamic Textured Impressions Embossing folders. These were quite a bit thicker. You can see the thickness between the two there. And the thickness is because these 3D folders give a really three-dimensional depth of embossing when you put it through the machine. This is the Country Floral embossing folder. Many of you may already have this folder. This was offered free as part of our most recent celebration promotion, so a lot of people have this folder. It's very popular, and it is now available as a 3D embossing folder, which I will talk about next. So to use a dynamic folder, if you have any of those, again, we'll begin with the standard platform. And then next I'm going to put in a piece of cardstock in my embossing folder. And now we have these nice lines which allow you to put your cardstock in nice and straight. And again, I put the hinge facing toward the rollers, and then one, I'm going to use this other one, clear cutting plate, and we'll roll that through the Big Shot. Take that out, and oh my goodness, this is just so pretty. I can see why so many people like. And I don't know if, hopefully you can tell in the video, but there is definitely varying depths of embossing. You can especially see it in that rose, but there are some that are more flat and some that are more raised. It is just a gorgeous, gorgeous embossing folder to use. So let me show you the card I made using that folder. This is a very simple card. I simply added a sentiment on there. I don't know if you can see too, though, I added some shimmer paint mist on there just to really bling it up a little bit. Purple is my favorite color, but I do like a little bling too, so I really love how this card turned out. And that varying depths of embossing is just, it's rather intense on there, isn't it? It's just beautiful. So that is how to use the Dynamics Textured Impressions Embossing folder. I'm going to keep these here because I want to now show you our new 3D embossing folders. I'm going to put that in here. Our new 3D embossing folders are thicker than the standard embossing folder, but not quite as thick as our dynamic embossing folders, which means that we need to use a different sandwich. So I'm going to put those aside. We still are going to begin with the platform because we're using a Big Shot. If you do have another die cutting machine, you can still use these. You just need to follow the instructions for your particular machine. So let me find my piece of cardstock. I'm going to put in here. And again, I'm going to use this line here so I get my paper in there nice and straight. Again, I'm going to put my hinge toward the rollers. Did I shift it? No. Put the rollers, and then we came out with a new, where did I put it? Here it is. We have a new 3D embossing folder plate to use with the new 3D embossing folders. Now you won't find this plate in the catalog because it was not ready from our manufacturer at the time of printing, but here is the item number. I don't know if you can see that, the item number for the 3D embossing folder plate. I will have a link to this folder in the description of this video below. I always provide links to the products that I use in my videos in the description box below. So I had, oops, let me go backwards again. I have the standard platform, the 3D embossing folder with a cardstock inside, the new 3D embossing folder plate, and we'll run that through the Big Shot just like before. So we'll pull this one out. And just like the dynamic one, this has a tremendous amount of varying depths of the embossing, and that is just so pretty. And there's the back side of it. I'm showing the back side because this is the card that I made with it, and I did use the back side on that, so you can kind of see. Now these do look a little bit different because I again added ink to this just to enhance the embossing a little bit more, but isn't that pretty? This side shows a bit more of the depth of the embossing. So you might be wondering, actually I wanted to tell you that when I made this card, I did not yet own the blue embossing folder plate because it wasn't available yet. So you might be wondering how I did this. So let me show you exactly how I did that. So I started again with the Big Shot platform. I don't have another piece of cardstock here, so I'm just going to slide this in again. Okay, so I put that on there, and then I used our embossing mats that we used to carry. I put that on top of there, and then a clear cutting plate and ran that through the Big Shot, and that's exactly what I did on this particular example. Now the embossing mats used to be available in our catalog. We no longer carry these either. Hopefully many of you already have these because they are wonderful. I use them all the time. I use the blue one probably more than this gray one, but I love those embossing mats. But if you don't have either of those, you're still okay. Another way to, let me find them, another way to use the new 3D folders without the new embossing plate is to create a shim. And what you can do is create a shim that works specifically with your machine. Each machine is slightly different, and they do kind of wear out over time. I know that mine has gotten loose over the years. I've had mine for more than 10 years. So I created a shim, and these are sheets of the backings that come from our designer series paper. This is a sheet of the backing from our designer series paper. I cut it up to 6 by 6 because that's the largest size of our embossing folders. And I used 5 that work in my machine. Now what you'll need to do is start with maybe 3 and then keep adding 1 at a time until you meet too much resistance. If you meet too much resistance to run it through, you need to back off to the fewer layers. So 5 happen to work for me. So I have, again, the platform, the embossing folder with the cardstock inside, and then my shim of 5 layers, and then put the clear cutting plate on top of that and run that through, and that will work as well. If you don't happen to have the backings from designer series paper, you can try using our Thick Whisper white cardstock. You may also want to use cardboard from cereal boxes. That's another great way to create a shim, and you'll just again need to experiment with that with your machine. I do like to recycle and reuse, and so I happen to have a bin full of these backings and other varying levels of chipboard. So you can create a shim out of anything you have. You just need to practice, and do not run it through your Big Shot if it's meeting too much resistance. You don't want to break your Big Shot. You can break the gears on your Big Shot. I actually have replaced the gears in this particular machine because, like I said, I've had it for 10 years and I use it a lot, and I basically broke the gears. So you don't want to do that. So just experiment as you need until you find what works the best. So those are the options that you can use for our new 3D embossing folders. So anyway, I hope that information was not too overwhelming, but helps you understand the differences between our new embossing folders. Like I said, I use them all the time. You can see them on all of these card examples that I showed. I love using our embossing folders on my projects. I think they add so much texture and detail, and they really pack a punch. So I hope you found this video helpful, and I will see you in the next video. Thanks. Bye-bye.